Now I would like to ask our High Commissioner, His Excellency Alexandros Zenon, to address you.
Thank you, Professor Charalambous. Ladies and gentlemen, I am particularly pleased to join you today in this Centre of Learning, the London Metropolitan University, to look back together at our 50 years of independent life. I would like to warmly thank the Cypriot Studies Centre of the University, which jointly with Episteme and its president, my good friend Peter Droussiotis, are organizing this conference, as well as for their many years of consistent support and their efforts in promoting and in raising awareness in the capital of the United Kingdom on issues related to Cyprus. I also wish to express my deep appreciation and gratitude to Professor Charalambous and to Dr. Chrysostomou for their long and dedicated service to the Centre. A warm welcome also to Mr. Stephanou, the government spokesman of the Republic of Cyprus, who despite his heavy and busy schedule found the time to travel to London to address this conference, as well as to all the speakers who will be participating. All of us, I believe, look forward to an insightful and interesting discussion as we take stock of the first half-century of our Republic. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years in the course of history is perhaps a tiny fragment of time. In the case of Cyprus and of its people, however, with all the events, happy or tragic, that have marked us since 1960, 50 years seem very long. Cyprus became an independent and sovereign state after a 4-year-long national liberation struggle against the then colonial power, Great Britain. Arms were the last recourse, after all political and diplomatic means and efforts had been exhausted and failed, without the British government demonstrating any sign of flexibility. The demand of the people was then for self-determination, which was generally interpreted as leading to union enosis with Greece. This objective, as we all know, was not attained. We compromised with guaranteed independence under an imposed, dysfunctional and controversial constitution, lacking any democratic legitimacy. Significantly, the agreements which gave Cyprus its independence were signed in London on 19 February 1959, coincidentally at the Lancaster House, just a few yards away from St. James's Square, where the High Commission premises stand today. The first president, Archbishop Makarios, pursued a policy aiming at building a free and democratic state with social justice combined with economic stability and development, which could provide prosperity for all its citizens, Greeks and Turks alike. This happy period was unfortunately short-lived. Although I have done my doctoral research and written my thesis on that period of our contemporary history, focusing in particular on the unsuccessful attempt to amend the Constitution, I will avoid the temptation to expand further on the events that led and caused the 1963 crisis. But with the wisdom of hindsight, I think it would be correct to say that the leadership of the time, the leadership of both communities, do not appear to have made an honest and exhaustive effort to implement that constitution, despite its complications, its shortcomings, and its largely undemocratic provisions. This constitution, though, has accompanied Cyprus's fortunes, for good and ill, for 50 years, and is today the shield of the legitimacy of the state. Mutual suspicion and bad faith prevailed at the time, not always unjustifiably. The psychological element was underestimated or even ignored, and I mean the psychological dependence of the Turkish Cypriots from the provisions of the Constitution, which politically and legally balance the fact that they are the less populous community. a sense of injustice prevailed among Greek Cypriots, who alone had fought against the colonial power and then saw the Turkish Cypriots benefiting, in their view, disproportionately from the newly acquired independence, with external factors and interferences making Cypriots overlook their collective true interests. The collapse appeared thus inevitable. The degree of responsibility was certainly not the same, but I'm wondering whether this really matters today. Allow me here a parenthesis. While researching years ago the British National Archives at the Public Record Office in Kew Gardens, I found two interesting reports of Her Majesty's Ambassador in Ankara addressed to the Secretary of State in London. The first one, dated 14 October 1963, and dates matter in this case, recounts a meeting between the Secretary General of the Turkish Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Tului, with the Counselor of the American Embassy there, Mr. Klock. I quote from the document. Klock said that he was struck by the fact that whereas at their September meeting Tului had made no mention of partition, on this occasion he referred to it in some detail and spoken very much on the same lines as he had done to me. Tului had even drawn a rough map of Cyprus with a line dividing the island into two, running from north to south. Tului also told Klock that under the Turkish partition plan, the Turkish sector would of course be annexed to Turkey, as the sector by itself was certainly not a viable economic unity. Unquote. Equally revealing is also the second document, written by the same British diplomat to the Foreign Secretary in London, recounting his meeting with Secretary General Tului on the 16th December 1963. I quote, Tului then added the revealing remark, even if Küçük is sometimes willing to make concessions, and that was after President Makarios presented his proposals, the decisions as to what is best for the Turkish community in Cyprus rests not with him, but with the Council of 8 or 10 Turks headed by Denktaş. In other words, hinted Tului, when Küçük talks to the High Commissioner, he may say things which represent only his personal views. Unquote. I need not remind that Dr. Fazil Küçük was the democratically and unopposed elected Vice President of the Republic and the leader of the Turkish community, while Mr. Denktaş has always been the man of Ankara in Cyprus. These are only two of the many similar examples in the British National Archives. It is obvious that what happened in Cyprus in July 1974, despite our own mistakes, was planned concretely and in detail in Ankara at least 10 years before. The Taksim policy, partition policy, pursued by Turkey, to which the government spokesman extensively referred yesterday, was not a novelty. What is also very clear, and I want to underline this, is that the Turkish Cypriots have never been a genuine concern for Turkey. They were, and they still are, the convenient pretext and the victims of strategic and security considerations and policies of successive Turkish governments. The situation hasn't changed much ever since. Important decisions concerning Cyprus are still taken in Ankara by what has become commonly known as the deep state. The difficult decades between the mid-60s and the mid-70s, with intercommunal troubles, the meddling of foreign powers, the constant threat of a Turkish armed intervention, which brought Greece and Turkey 3 times to the brink of war, threatening the stability of the southeast flank of NATO, culminated in the summer of 1974 with the Turkish invasion, the consequences of which are still with us 36 years on. consequences were of truly gigantic dimensions.